Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. I'm Judy, the YouTube lawyer, and today our special guest again is comedian Bruce Smirnoff. So let's talk a little bit about Bruce's background. His bio says, with a heightened inflection and introspection gained from years in psychotherapy, comedian Bruce Smirnoff tells funny because they're true stories about bad dates, crazy relatives, and professional disappointments. His many television credits include The Late Show on Fox, Stand Up Spotlight, VH1, Make Me Laugh on Comedy Central, and Evening at the Improv. He wrote and starred in the critically praised one-person show, Other Than My Health, I Have Nothing, and Today I Don't Feel So Good. In addition, he's also been invited 3 times to appear at the world-class Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. He's performed at the nation's top comedy clubs such as New York City's famous Comic Strip, Los Angeles's renowned Comedy Store, as well as at Atlantic City's prestigious Tropicana and Caesars Hotels, and Las Vegas's legendary MGM, Rivera, and Tropicana hotels. He also entertained on the Norwegian and Royal Caribbean cruise lines. So Bruce Smirnoff and I have this shared obsession with the Dan Markel, Charles Adelson case. So that's what brings us together today. Let's welcome Bruce Smirnoff to the screen. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Judy.
Hello.
That's some impressive resume there.
Yeah, did you write it?
Of course. But it is, it sounds so good, and it is true. But when you listen to it, boy, I'm going, who's she talking about? But yeah, I guess.
And that's only the tip of the iceberg, because I saw on your VH1 special back from the early 1990s that you had opened for Kenny Loggins.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
My friend Craig Shoemaker had that job, and he's the Love Master. I'm sure some of your viewers know he tours around. I just was with him actually a couple of weeks ago, and he couldn't do that particular weekend. That was Labor Day weekend at Caesars in Lake Tahoe, and I got to open for Kenny. It was great.
Yeah, that is so cool. I mean, who would have thought that, they would want a comedian to open for a rock star?
No, you go that way. Sure. A lot of musicians have comedian openers because they remember, you don't want anything similar to you, and you want something uplifting. Listen, Elvis had Sammy Shore. The interesting, like Elvis, if you read his biography by Leonard Goldman, Elvis used to like cornball, like me, Jewish comedians. So he had Sammy Shore opening for him. And Sammy Shore, Elvis paid a lot of money. We're talking about like 1969 money. I think he was getting $7,500 a week, which is something like, I think that's like $35,000 or more a week in today's money. And so he used that money and he bought the Comedy Store in Los Angeles with his wife, Mitzi. And that's the birth of that famous place through Elvis, because there was always pictures of Elvis throughout the Comedy Store. But Elvis liked cornball comics, and no one would listen to Sammy Shore. And then when Sammy got fired, they used Jackie Kahane, was another, Catskill kind of cornball comic, and people didn't care. They're there to see Elvis, and they're eating whatever. But that's you always want comedy to open up for a singer.
Yeah, everybody can use some comedy, even this legal YouTube channel here, right? So we'll be sure to definitely touch on your career and all your stories later on. But of course, most people here are like us. They're obsessed with the whole Dan Markel, Charlie, Wendy, Donna, Harvey Adelson case. So maybe I did take the time to listen to Rashbaum's statements again, and I wrote them down so we can quote it for those who didn't hear it or weren't there on the live stream last week. So Daniel Rashbaum, who is Charlie Adelson's attorney, he said, quote, "We anticipate that Miss Magbanua will not be called as a witness at trial after seeing those proffers. Maybe we're wrong, but we anticipate she won't be. The media could focus on one little piece of those proffers, take a snippet of those 4+ hours of discussion, and that could taint the veneer unnecessarily." So some people are like, darn, that sounds like bad news. But then again, this is Daniel Rashbaum, Charlie Adelson's attorney, spinning the narrative. So, I mean, how did you feel after watching that hearing and seeing the judge rule for Rashbaum on both his motions?
Well, the main thing is that like I said, we got to get an organ player for this show because we're going to be vamping until we talked about that. What did you think? Like August?
Late September. Yeah, probably late September at the earliest now.
So obviously we have a delicious, selfish interest in seeing justice for Dan, but at the same time, the wheels of justice grind slowly, right? So that's it. I felt like shit. Is what I felt like.
Oh, but on the other hand, you just keep thinking like, well, this is the same attorney who would say that Charlie didn't have anything to do with it, that he was no flight risk, he had no history of legal problems. Give me a break, when he was trying to keep Charlie out of jail pending trial. So we'll take that with a grain of salt. Maybe he was trying to taint the way the media would spit, or the general public would think about the Adelsons, by saying, oh, well, Miss Magbanua is going to be useless, so she's not going to be called, we don't think. So, yeah, I don't know.
In your opinion, this is normal, right? This is what goes on? Because I know nothing about the law world, only through this case. So I ask you, is that it's normal, right?
Yeah, I think that is normal, especially the continuance, because as I said before on another live stream, usually a judge will give a continuance at least once if the attorney says, hey, I need more time, please. There's so much evidence in this case. So, yeah, so it's not a total surprise, but it is a big disappointment. We really wanted to see what Katie's proffers said and all the information that she has on the Adelsons, but looks like we'll just have to keep speculating for the next 4 or 5 plus more months. And I do, of course, feel the worst for Dan's family, because they were probably all making plans already to come to Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other news we were just talking about is Carl Steinbeck's new YouTube channel, which is called Jury Trial Mentor, and his really great, very well produced video with his brother John, where they talked about all the reasons why they feel that Wendy Adelson was involved. So what do you think so far?
Well, I'm only halfway through it because it has so much information that I just keep pausing and I keep looking things up, and it's fantastic. These guys are, what do they say, late to the dance, but they are sensational. I would not want to go up against them if I committed a crime. They and very interesting, fact-based, and I'm only halfway through it, but I already put in a great comment for them. It's terrific.
Yeah, the more attention we can get to this case, the better it is for justice in general and for Dan Markel and his family. So I was really happy to see that, there's another attorney out there who is totally obsessed with the case and watching almost everything. I did want to mention that there were a few minor errors that I caught. I watched a whole entire thing today, and I took a bunch of notes and stuff. So why not make it into another YouTube video? But and I also wanted to bring more attention to some of the things that John and his brother mentioned too. But again, the whole production value, all the information they're giving, it's just wonderful to see that overall. Yeah.
They mentioned what stuck out was about the at the wedding, it was not kosher and it was supposed to be kosher. And the tidbit that the last time I was listening to it was that the rabbi was so angry that he walked out. He left the ceremony.
Or actually, yeah, there was a rabbi that, from what I heard, actually told Dan, you shouldn't have married her. And that there were people who had to leave the wedding, and Dan had to figure out, well, where are these people going to eat their dinners? So he went around having to apologize to so many people. And I'm sure, this is just a tip of the iceberg of Donna Adelson's total disrespect for Dan. So, and of course, as John Steinbeck mentioned multiple times, just when you're picking apart these little details, sure, that's not specifically a sign that Wendy was involved in plotting the murder. But when you take it all together, it sure shows evidence of that motive and that deviancy and the deceitfulness, the whole entire behavior of Wendy in this murder case. So, I did also want to mention, they mentioned early on hitmen and what the hitmen said about they knew they were doing it for a woman that wants to get her kids back.
Right.
So that's totally important because Luis Rivera specifically mentioned Wendy multiple times when he was being interviewed by the police, and that Sigfredo had mentioned, there's Wendy, that's my homie. So, who knows whether it really was Wendy that they saw, but I think the fact that, Sigfredo seemed to totally know Wendy and they mentioned her name, I think that's very damning evidence.
Another thing they talked about, and I know you've talked about this, and I think with Mentor Lawyer about the owl. That's the one thing I don't know. What's the story with the owl thing?
Okay. Oh, so did they mention? Yeah, they did mention her wearing this owl shirt from Banana Republic.
Oh, you have the owl.
I got it. I got it on Poshmark. So this is the shirt that Wendy Adelson wore at her police interview.
Yeah.
Which she reminds people, lasted at least 5
hours. That's the way it's sitting on there. Yes, it is the one. Yeah.
Yeah. This is it. It's from the Banana Republic 2013 fall collection. So they're no longer making this shirt. And so anyway, people are saying that an owl in many cultures symbolizes death or impending death. So it was another sign that perhaps, Wendy already knew that Dan was going to be killed that day. So she decided to wear this T-shirt with the owl on it. And you can see it very clearly in her police interview video. And one thing, I don't know if the brothers mentioned this or not, but of course we know that she took this humongously circuitous route to go south, to drive up towards where Dan's house was, and then continued driving west. And then she went to the ABC liquor store on Thomasville Road to buy the Bullet Rye. I thought it was Bullet Bourbon, but Fancy Fiction corrected me and said it was actually Bullet Rye. But that brand of alcohol is pronounced Bullet. So that's also pretty strange. It's like makes you wonder, like, why would she do that? Especially since there were other liquor stores much closer to where she lived.
Right.
And in fact, she was supposedly on the way to have lunch at Mosaic with her friends. And Mentor Lawyer has said there actually is a liquor store right there in that same shopping plaza. So why did she have to drive all the way down towards where Dan lived to see what was going on and then keep driving and buy that Bullet Rye? So that I find also very strange and kind of points towards her at least knowing that Dan was going to be killed that day. Yeah.
When we keep listening to this and we almost like keep living this, it's just so obvious to us, but to people that may be watching that don't know all these details, it seems very suspicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And, not to nitpick, but I think one of the Steinbeck brothers mentioned Alabama, but Lacoste actually had gone to Tennessee to visit his friend that around that time that Dan's murder happened. So he went to Tennessee. Luckily, he was seen on a Kmart surveillance video also checking out and paying for his purchases. So he had his alibi, or there was proof that he really wasn't even in town when Dan got shot. Okay, and Wendy was not an adjunct professor, but she was more like a clinical professor at FSU, just a minor point. And I'm pretty sure the oldest son was either 4 or almost 4 when Dan was killed.
Right.
There was also, okay, so I don't think this was mentioned in their video, but do you remember, like, supposedly Wendy had lost her voice that week that Dan was killed. But I'm like, if you lost your voice, then how did you still manage to go have yoga and talk with Jeffrey Lacoste and then take a walk with your friend Jane that week before Dan was killed? So I think that was just an excuse for her to avoid having to talk to Dan.
Wow.
She wanted to avoid him.
I've not heard that tidbit.
Okay, so that was another lie, claiming that she had lost her voice so that she didn't have to talk to Dan that week. It was also not mentioned that she had told Jeffrey Lacoste she didn't want contact for a full week. She wanted a break from their relationship. So again, that is strange because it makes you wonder, like, like, was that because she was already spending that whole week plotting with her family? Or was it also because she was already packing up all her stuff in the house, so she didn't want Jeffrey going over and seeing that she's packing up? So very suspicious timing.
To me, it's all obvious. It's a slam dunk, but I mean, I know you're not supposed to say things like that.
Well, I mean, we're not jurors, so I mean, whatever.
When you're obsessed like this, and I never watched an episode of Perry Mason. I don't care about this stuff. I've never been sued, thank God. I told you I went to jury duty a couple of times, but I've never been interested in any of this stuff. But now that I watch all these different programs and you hear all these details, I obviously there's no one there to be on the other side to go against it, but it's just amazing. I don't know what do you think the family is doing on a daily basis down in Miami? Do you think, because we're so obsessed about this, a lot of people, like when I talk to people about this, they've never heard of it. They don't want to hear about it. So I guess some of their friends aren't even aware of it, and they go to parties and entertain people. I don't know. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea what they're doing all day, but it always seemed like Donna was really busy taking care of those grandchildren. Yeah. So she's probably just like trying to, focus on taking care of the kids, and they probably aren't really watching the media because it would probably make them too nervous, especially Donna. And yeah. Just based on things that other YouTubers have brought forth, it looks like Wendy's still living her best life. She still has friends and, posting on social media, looking as if, everything is fine. But who knows what's really going on behind closed doors? Maybe they are constantly in touch with their attorneys and kind of creeping around, making sure that they're not talking to each other on the phone, or, right. I mean, I would be so paranoid. And it looks like Charlie was paranoid for years before he finally got arrested. He was afraid his phone was being bugged and was very anxiety ridden and needed medication for that. So,
and it turns out he had a good reason to think that, because everything was being watched. Mm-hmm. So good kudos to the FBI for getting in right away.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking at. Okay. So let me scroll through some of these comments here. Yeah, I watched a YouTube video that said it's actually pronounced bullet. Yeah, Bulleit, the alcohol. Yeah, and I really did think it was bourbon, but Fancy has said it was Bullet rye. Okay. Very interesting, but you're right. Makes perfect sense. She was lying about Dan to her family from the start. TV gift instead of hiring a hitman. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that TV was always a code word for murder. Yeah. So how would you address this person who has left us already? What a waste of time. Every life you repeat the same stories, never bringing anything new.
She's got a point. There's nothing. This is, like I said, the vamping. We have nothing new to discuss until the next stone turns. It could be till December, right? Or
yeah,
October.
September, October, November, December. Yeah, who knows? But our goal, or at least my goal here, is to bring more attention to the whole murder of Dan Markel. There's still more information that a lot of people don't know. So to us that are really tuned in to all the details of this stuff, then maybe it is like, oh, you're just rehashing old news. Well, the new news was, in fact, the hearing just last week about the, motion to seal the proffer and motion to continue. So every so often I do have some new news. And if people don't feel like it's worth their time, then don't waste your time then. Okay, goodbye. Yeah. Okay. Sayonara. All right. Thank you, Dawn. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I really appreciate those people who are here and care about the case and still want to talk, I mean, everybody's welcome to join in too. I'll put in a link in the chat for anyone that wants to have a nice civil discussion about their viewpoints about the case. I'll put it in the chat here. Okay, what about this one? The problem with the Rivera-Wendi testimony is that Georgia in her closing said Katie was trying to wall off Charlie for Sigfredo. If Georgia is right, it is possible that Katie lied to Sigfredo to distance Charlie. Well, yeah, it could be, but at this point, we know that Katie has already turned state's witness and has talked with Georgia and the investigators. So I'm not too worried about that. I mean, certainly Georgia can say different things at Charlie's trial versus what she said at Katie's trial. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yes, it's also been said she wanted to pull out of getting married, but her mom or brother probably pressured her. Okay. Well. Oh, okay. So Liz wants to hear more of your insights, if any, into the community that Adelsons belong to in Miami.
Well, I work part-time for an agency that books entertainers on cruise ships. And I work for, my boss is named Wendy, and she's about the same age as Wendy Adelson. And she was married at Temple Sinai, the same temple that we talked about with the kosher meal. But, and I was at the wedding. So when they talk about that synagogue / temple, I can picture, it's a great place. It's in Boca. It's like the place you want to get married at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does that Wendy happen to know anybody that knows the Adelsons?
No, that's what's so interesting about, I was telling you that no one, I bring this up sometimes in conversation, no one is even aware of the case except for my dentist, because Charlie, after dental school, I guess worked a little bit in the same office that she was working, and they're about the same age. And they just remember him as being, you know, the same kind of guy that he appears to be, you know, just a real, like a party guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I say, yeah. And so does your boss? Oh, I'm sorry. Does your boss have any interest in this?
Nothing. No one. That's the thing. That's like this, why we have this, what seems to be like a secret society here. It just, things just touch people differently. And like I said, it's like Close Encounters. All these people wound up at that Devil's Mountain at the end of the movie because they were getting a message. So this case just intrigues people differently. Most people don't care about it, but not us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know everybody is busy with their own lives and family obligations and work and stuff. So there are plenty of people who you would think would care about the case that really are like, oh, well, that's too bad. Okay, whatever. Yeah. So Shaquille says, never gauge a jury. Yeah, that is so true. So we all, part of me also has to be prepared. Like, what if Charlie is found not guilty? You know, what if the state decides there's not enough evidence to bring forth charges against Donna and Wendy? You know, I mean, it's not up to us. It's up to the jury ultimately to convict somebody. Jen, thank you for being here. Says, I heard they were pushed out of their country club. Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that. Yeah, interesting. What's Miami World really like, and why do they support the Adelsons? Okay. Well, Bruce, do you feel like you're part of the community?
I used to live down in that area, but I mean, I didn't move to Florida till 2003, and being in show business, I'm not part of the community. These are very wealthy people, and I was just, you know, trying to make a living on cruise ships. So I would touch that area because South Beach is where the bump took place, and I used to live about a mile from there, and so I know the area. But that's a heavy duty lifestyle those people have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And oh, hi, True Lifestyles. Thanks for being here. She says, I agree. I've never been so involved in a case in my life. Thank you to Judy for this. Yeah, it's just a very riveting case. And I think I've mentioned before that I felt some sort of connection to Dan and Wendy since, you know, I previously was a law faculty wife also who had to move someplace where I didn't really want to be because of my ex-husband's teaching position. So although I never thought about killing him off to be able to move away. So, Yeah. Okay, Bruce, they're watching you and Judy's channel. Okay. Okay. I think they're talking about Montreal or something else. The best and only evidence of an act in furtherance is framing Jeff. Yes, but again, let's just wait and see what happens with Katie's proffer, because I feel like the act in furtherance that Wendy most likely committed was giving Dan's detailed schedule, giving Dan's whereabouts to either to Charlie or to Katie, knowing that it was going to be given to the hitman.
Was it you who was playing the tapes earlier in the week? Somebody had it on their channel, and it was Katherine Magbanua talking real tough Tony. She was like gangster talk.
Oh, that was Fancy Fiction.
Okay, yeah. Fancy was doing it. And then to see her on juxtapose that on the witness, and I don't know, I don't remember. It's so weird. When she's talking like a gangster, it's so if you said she's not going to testify at the
I think she probably would, but that's just Daniel Rashbaum.
What personality do you think would show up? The tough, the real one that's semi-articulate, or the I don't know and acting really dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't think it matters if Katie comes across as some crude cursing idiot, because as long as she seems credible, because that was her on the wiretap. So she can't really just disown it and be like, oh, that was somebody else, but it still gives her credibility, because there she can explain, this is why I was so mad about it. I was really upset because, it seemed like somebody was onto us by then. So of course I was cursing like a sailor, with Charlie, because both of us knew we were in deep doo-doo. So,
for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I thought about this joke too. What is Donna thinking these days? Depends. Okay, that's funny. Okay. Do you think Donna has seen the proffer? Well, I don't think she's actually seen it. Well, who knows? Because Rashbaum was her attorney before too. So I'm sure whatever information Charlie knows through his lawyer, he would be more than happy for Rashbaum to be talking with his mom and producing, providing anything to her too. So maybe she has seen it. Yeah, especially, since Donna and Charlie both still seem to be very, tied up, joined to the hip. I'm very disturbed by Donna's seeming control over the children and Wendy. Yeah, I've mentioned that, that could be why she liked being a kindergarten teacher a long time ago, because you can control little kids a lot better than older people. Okay, so people are saying hi to each other. Okay, seems like Wendy hands over control to her mom. I don't think there'll be a trial until next spring. Yeah, well, who knows? I really hope it will happen.
Wow.
Well, that would be awful if it didn't take place next spring, because, once again, poor Dan's parents, it's really hard on them to travel and all the mental stress, kind of thinking like, okay, we've got to get ready for this trial. And
is that natural? Does that happen sometime in trials where it can go a year gap?
It could be if something comes up, but usually it would be like in that Sarah Boone trial I've mentioned, where that woman just kept firing her attorneys, or her public defenders kept quitting. So something weird has to happen to put it off again.
Sarah Boone, is that the one that happened in Florida, and the husband?
The suitcase.
In the swamps, in the water?
No. This is the case. Well, they weren't even married, but she was in this abusive, toxic dating relationship with Jorge Torres. I think that's his last name. And so she was probably all drunk and stuff. She claims that they were playing hide and seek, which I don't believe. But then Jorge wound up zipped up in this gigantic suitcase. And then she even shot video on her cell phone of him, crying out for help and begging to be let out of the suitcase. And I think she allegedly threw the suitcase down the stairs, or, whacked him with a bat while he was still trapped in the suitcase, and then mocked him and left him down there to die while she went upstairs to sleep. So the police weren't called until the next morning. I think she might have called her ex-husband first when she discovered Jorge dead the next morning in the suitcase. So Anyway, so you haven't heard about that? That's in
No,
Tallahassee.
no.
Oh,
Again, if it wasn't for this trial, you and I would know each other. I wouldn't. I would be legalist. I know nothing about any of this stuff. This is just because of living, in that community, that this thing grabbed me like that. Wow. So what was the one where the woman hired a guy to kill her husband, and then she just went to, and then it happened in northern Florida. I don't know. I just saw something about that.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely tons of all sorts of horrible criminal cases going on in Florida, and we get to see them thanks to the sunshine laws. So, Bruce, do you think you would actually go up to Tallahassee to watch the Adelson trial?
I don't know. I mean, if I don't know. I thought about it. I looked at that. I think there's like 3 or 4 hotels, and my luck, no one really goes to this, right? Isn't there a lot of empty seats when they pan the courthouse, right?
Yeah.
The day I would go, they'd probably be sorry, there's no room, and then it would be a wasted time to go up there. But it would be very interesting. I thought about it, but it is a schlep. I mean, it is. What is it, like 8 hours from here to get up there? And not easy. They were talking about that partially being the reason for an extension, because Charlie's lawyer has to drive up, I think, 5 days a week he has to be up there and then go home. So it's you can imagine the billable hours when you're traveling like that.
Yeah, you would think that he would just get on a flight, though, because wouldn't a flight be less than an hour from Miami?
Yeah. But I think there's only one flight up there that's nonstop. The rest you gotta. I think that was the whole thing when that caused this whole situation. It was just a pain in the neck to get from Miami to Tallahassee all the time.
Well, too bad, because Charlie could have hired someone like Tim Jansen, or he could have hired plenty of other really good attorneys closer to Leon County if he wanted. Yeah. So why should everybody kowtow to him and his attorney's wishes because he decided to hire some high-powered attorney from Miami? So, okay, I can't imagine Donna did not see the proffer. I mean, the lawyer can share it and try to corroborate. Yeah, correct, especially since that lawyer also represented Donna too. So, everybody keeps asking. No, Bruce has no relation to the vodka family. So, okay.
I wish.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Are there other Smirnoffs around? I guess the only other person I've heard of is that comedian. And
Yakov. That he's from, I believe, Ukraine originally, or Russia, and he came to Los Angeles, and I don't believe that's his real last name. I don't even know what my family's last name, because the Smirnoff in Russian is like the equivalent of Smith, so it's a very common name, and it's not a Jewish name; it's an Orthodox Christian name. So I think when Jewish people were living in the Pale of Settlement, 100+ years ago, they just when they left Russia to come to America, they took any name they could. But we don't know. Our family doesn't know what our real name is, so I can't help you there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, sorry to hear about that. Wow. Interesting.
Do I have a bottle of it up there? I don't even have a bottle of Smirnoff.
Any Smirnoff vodka? Okay. So True Lifestyle is saying the only person she knows that cares about the case is her esthetician and the dentist. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Too Deep, thanks for being here. Says, thanks for coming back. Bruce has fascinating stories, a wealth of knowledge, firsthand experiences. Please pick his brain. Don't hold back, Bruce. Thank you both again.
I only know like show business. I don't know law, so I feel like I'm a passenger on a train here, because you're exercising your intellect, and I know nothing about law. Oh, I do know one thing. I made a U-turn in a business area when I lived in LA, and I had to go to driving school. And I remember listening to driving school was like 8 hours. And I remember the one thing I took from it, this is real minutia, but when you go into an intersection, the yellow light, do you know how that's coded, how that's set to turning red based on the speed limit? Do you know? It is. So
it is?
So the orange light, if it's 35 miles an hour, the orange light is 3.5 seconds. So that's how you gauge whether you can make the light or not. And that's what I learned. very
Oh,
boring, but it is interesting. I did the other night, because I'm very obedient when I drive, but I hit the intersection. The light was orange. I went through it because I knew 45 miles an hour. I had 4.5 seconds. So I beat it.
okay, cool. Okay. Well, but getting back to the Adelson thing,
Yes.
so Angela said she would be willing to fly to Tallahassee for the day. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like even when we know when the trial is happening, like we don't know for sure when certain witnesses are going to actually be up there testifying. There could be all sorts of delays, or they could change the order of things on us. So yeah, and plus normally when you travel, you've got to book the flight ahead of time and book the hotel ahead of time in order to get a decent rate. So, I mean, I'm still hoping to go, but I'll definitely have to see, the whole timing of everything with my work and how much it's all going to cost to go down there. Yeah.
You live in North Carolina?
Yes. Yeah. And it doesn't seem like there are any direct flights from RDU down to Tallahassee. I think I'm going to have to stop over in Atlanta to switch planes, but we'll see. I mean, I certainly hadn't bought April yet, so yeah. Okay. So wonder what are the ramifications for Donna and Wendy being named conspirators other than shame? Well, yeah, it's just basically shame now because they haven't been formally charged with any crime. They haven't been arrested. So yeah, that's a sad thing, is that even though the state has said in a legal pleading that they are co-conspirators, everybody's still waiting with bated breath as to when anyone's going to be arrested. Yeah. Adelsons are getting a message. Even people with money and connections like the Murdaughs can face justice. Yeah, did you watch any of that Murdaugh trial?
No.
Nah, it didn't interest you.
Well, it's getting, look, Netflix has a whole, I didn't look at it, but Netflix, when you click on it, I think in their top 10 is some kind of documentary that they've compiled over this period of time. When did the murder take place? About a year or two ago? It was a pretty fast trial.
Yeah, summer
right?
of 2016.
2016?
Oh, not 2016. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah,
2 years ago.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's terrible and it's horrible. And again, it's like, and justice was served in that, obviously, no matter how many ways that guy, I guess that guy calculated. I did listen to I guess he wanted to own up to everything but killing. So he probably faced 50 years just in all the other stuff of ripping off his clients and all these things, but it's still not double life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
But again, yeah. I didn't watch any of it. I found it, not that interesting. And yet there's people that are on YouTube with their channels talking about
like totally obsessed with the Murdaugh stuff. And they're like, yeah, there's still that Stephen Smith death as well as the Gloria Satterfield.
That's the one. Stephen Smith, isn't that the one?
Oh, the young man, the young gay man that was found dead in the road.
See, again, I don't know if I thought that was the one. No. Okay, that's not the one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Liz says, I can see Bruce being invited to Donna and Harvey's for dinner. Don't do it, Bruce. They don't deserve you as a friend. Well, I mean, didn't you say that you had known a lot of people like the Adelsons and you have even been friends with very wealthy people?
I had the honor of working on these high-end cruise ships. So it was a lot of really wealthy people. And part of the job when you work as a comedian on these ships, you have to integrate with the passengers because I'm staying on the ship with them. You're on sometimes 10 days, 2 weeks, and it's for kind of really wealthy people. And I made friends with families that are of the same age as the Adelsons. Some of them were they own dental practices. That's how, I guess that's why I was drawn into this. I remember that I knew this family from down here, no relation, great people. But here was a family with that privilege and that wealth, but they just took it. They took it to that limit. You can't kill people. You just can't do that. And they somehow they were deluded where they got to get, I don't know who plotted it exactly, but how many members, where they just figured, yeah, we can pull this off. And now you see the holes when you go through especially that video of the Steinbeck brothers over the weekend, you just see these guys almost take you minute by minute, and you just go, what were they thinking? And yet They were smart enough to open up a dental practice and do good enough work to have repeat business. Their office is in Margate, or was in Margate. A lot of wealthy people live there. So they had something really, really good going. And I believe in the, what were those podcasts? What was that one called? What was that? The first podcast on, this was many years ago. Not the, it wasn't a video.
The Wandry
podcast? I think that was where they talked about how they had like a station wagon at first, and they had a real middle class life. And then fast forward, real high life, you make big money with dental clinics. And with all that, they just figured, yeah, but we've gotten this far. Let's off our son-in-law.
Yeah, just throw some money around and solve more problems. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so Angela says, I wonder if Rashbaum was laying the groundwork in the hearing, trying to get the trial moved to Miami if the proffer wasn't sealed. Oh, I'm sure it's not going to be moved out to Miami. I mean, that is way too far, and it's totally inconvenient for the prosecutors and the witnesses and everybody. Yeah, if anything, if there were a change in venue, they'd probably just scoot it over to the next county or so. Yeah, but I doubt that's going to happen, especially now that Judge Wheeler ordered that the proffer be sealed. So they're going to be able to find a jury. I mean, we're always talking about how we're the only people in our whole city or whatever who seems really interested in the Markel case. And there are people in Florida that tell us that nobody they know talks about the Markel case or knows about it either. So, yeah, I'm like almost 100% sure the trial would not be moved out to Miami. Yeah. On the other hand, they might run into more people that are biased or tainted because they know of the Adelsons around Miami. Yeah. Jared Brittigan is the other new domestic homicide murder for hire case. It will take forever to convict a wife. So do you know anything about the Jared Brittigan case? It's in Florida also.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So True Lifestyles is doing some coverage of that, but he's another person who went through a divorce and was having some custody issues. And then the wife, people believe that the wife hired a hitman to kill him. And but I don't think anything has really happened to the wife as far as I know. Yeah, just a lot of suspicion there.
Do you know anybody personally that ever went to jail?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to, like, while you're talking, going, I don't even know anybody that went to jail. It's just, and yet we find ourselves consumed in this case. But yes, I have no background in any of this stuff, and yet you're reading these. It's not on there. What'd you say? Jared
Brittigan.
Yeah. These things, you hear it and it just goes through my head. I don't think about it. It just somehow this Adelson thing touched me, and all these other things I have no knowledge of. I'm sorry, I come off like an idiot. Talk show business to me. I can stand a little more.
We'll talk about show business soon enough.
Show business, but that's all I know.
Okay. So Jean, comment was from probably about 10 minutes ago, but she says she thought you're thinking about that Denise Williams trial or Mike Williams.
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Swamp or whatever. Yeah. Mike Williams.
There was something in the water where they found something in the water, and that guy, you mentioned his name before. He's an attorney in Tallahassee. He defended.
Yeah.
One of those
Brian Winchester.
Yes. And he's been on a lot of these podcasts. And he's a very bright guy too. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Brown and Beachy, thank you. She says it's a 1.5 hour flight on American Airlines from Miami to Tallahassee.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Persis says my niece's husband's last name is Smirnoff. Okay.
He's got to be my relative then.
Is it some relative?
Unless he's, they probably. What's the husband's name? What are we doing?
Yeah.
We're playing geography on a podcast.
It's like your distant nephew or whatever.
Possible, yeah.
Okay, Skeeter says, I appreciate you and Bruce. I'll be listening while baking for a school event. Okay, thank you. Thanks for tuning in instead of telling us that we are just a waste of time. I think the days of wine and roses and privilege are coming to an end. No protection for the privilege, like Hugh said about Alex Murdaugh. Good point, Hugh. Yeah, that's what we all hope for, because I think we as a society or a community, we're so disgusted when we think that these people are getting away with murder or crimes.
Have you ever had dental surgery before?
Wisdom tooth removal.
Okay. So
Yeah.
did they give you a painkiller?
Yes.
Okay. So I have like a couple of dental implants, and when you get the toothache, they give you like Vicodin to take, for the pain. So if you break it in half, you take one, you get a little zonked out, but it takes away the pain. This guy, Alex Murdoch, did he say he was taking 55 of these pills?
Yeah, and people are saying that's ridiculous. That's a total lie because, why would anybody be like taking so many, like that would be jars and
I
jars
don't know,
of
but that
pills.
that seems like that's like an overdose level, considering a half of one can zonk a person. But yes, that was just a crazy, those are the little tidbits that came flying out about that. But it doesn't matter. I guess that drove him, yeah, I don't think that's enough to kill somebody. I think he just didn't like his, I don't know. I don't know anything about the case. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, never book your hotel ahead of time. Okay.
Right.
Oh, okay. So she's saying that her relative's husband's last name is spelled with a V. Okay.
Those are real Russians. Yes, that's how it's spelled in Russian. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Donna died before she goes to trial. I don't know. Yeah, you never know. So, yeah.
The way it's going, it could be another about 20 years. I don't know how old is she now? 70?
Oh, she's like 73 now, I think.
73.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. It's disappointing the original DA in this case refused to prosecute, years wasted. Yeah, but at least Charlie is arrested and in jail now, and they've managed to get more evidence on him over the last X number of years. Yeah, let's hope the days of privilege are over. Gloria Satterfield's case coming up next. Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, her kids deserve to know the truth. Yeah. I had no interest in the Murdaugh trial or Johnny Depp trials. I was amazed at how many people were obsessed with them. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was weird. You would see these like YouTuber channels take off because all they talked about all day and night was Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Yeah. But, this case just definitely seems a lot more riveting to us for some reason. Yeah, whether they get charged, convicted or not, the Adelsons no longer have a real life. I can't imagine what their life is like now. We all have to look in the mirror every morning. Yeah, unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath, then you don't care, right? Just keep living your best life. Yeah. Okay, Charlie's lawyer doesn't. Why aren't more arrests happening? Oh, good. Okay, so Carrie, are you the only person in New Hampshire who even knows about the Dan Markel case? Yeah. Okay. Bruce is so deadpan. Love it. This is why I might be single forever.
Wait a minute. The reason why I'm so deadpan is that I shut up when I don't know what the score is. So this is all legal stuff. And I apologize for not being able to chime in. When I watch you and I watch all these other channels, you guys can call the law. I can tell you jokes, their origin being with comedians, but I don't know much about anything about law. So yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, not a lot of it is just legal stuff. I think a lot of it is just the little details all throughout the whole case involving multiple people that all, add up to most of us to thinking that the Adelson family is guilty. They did conspire, just our opinion. But so I don't think you have to be legally trained to look at all the details and put it all together. Yeah. Okay. So here's something you can talk to us about. Did you ever meet Don Rickles? And if so,
yes, I did. He has a daughter who does stand-up comedy. Her name is Mindy. But I think it was like 85 or 86, I was performing at a comedy club in Vegas. And one of the other comedians on the show, evidently Rickles, well, he was a very nice man, and he was very approachable. So if a comedian called him up or left a message for him at the hotel, he would leave backstage passes. So we got to see the show, and then we went backstage. And he sweat a lot. If you watched any of his performances, so he would come off. So we're sitting in the dressing room waiting for him, and he comes backstage, and he's just soaking wet. He goes, guys, wait here, going in the shower. So he goes in, takes a shower, and we're sitting there. He had like a guy that like was his assistant. I think his name was Harry, and Harry got us a drink. And then Rickles came out of the shower in the bathrobe, and he when you meet famous people, sometimes they talk at you, they don't talk to you. He spoke to you, and he always used your first name. So you always felt very special when you were around him. And I think I saw him at the American Comedy Awards, but I didn't talk to him. That was like maybe 10 or 15 years later. But yeah, he was a great guy. Some people, when you meet them, they're very disappointing. They're not very nice people. So he was great.
Yeah.
Mean on stage and a great guy off stage.
Awesome.
And his daughter is like funny too. I don't know if she's broken through yet, but you can go on YouTube, Mindy Rickles, and see her shtick.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, well, totally different question. What's happening with Sarah Boone? That's what I asked Mentor Lawyer when he and I did the joint live stream about a week or so ago, and he wasn't even sure. But for sure, Mentor Lawyer will be covering the Sarah Boone case later on his channel. I had always heard April, but I mean, there have been so many continuances in her case because she keeps changing attorneys and either getting fired by her lawyers or she's firing them, the public defenders. So yeah, so I would probably just tune into Deep Dive True Crime to see what's up with that Sarah Boone case. Yeah, so no, I don't. I think there's probably some issues for liability within the jail if they let some prisoner give medical care to other prisoners. Yeah.
I'm still, when you talk about that jail, I'm still remembering the video that was released about the fruit. They take the fruit and they put it into the toilet and it ferments. Jailhouse wine, is that what that?
Yeah, toilet wine. Yeah.
But it just shows you how some of these people are really, criminals can be really smart. Obviously, it's a big statement I'm saying, but they figure out, they know even science and how to take a prune. What was it? A prune, a peach, and an apricot and make it into liquor. That was that guy that died that was talking about being in the prison with who? Who was he in with? Oh, he was in with Sigfredo, and that's right. And Sigfredo got drunk on that wine, and that's when he kind of said something about Catherine. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what stands out for me are the prunes and the apricots making wine.
Yeah, that sounds disgusting. Yeah. So, and my Patriot lady is saying you should get a YouTube channel with comedies and crimes. You interested in doing your own channel?
No, but I love being on yours. Oh, okay. I put on a shirt. You got to see, I got the cats. They haven't annoyed anybody. They're sleeping. They're having a good day here. So it's nice.
Yeah.
I shaved for you. I got all cleaned up. Like this is like a show for me.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Someone, Patty is saying Don Rickles was a hoot. Donna told Wendy, we Adelson stick together when and where. Well, I don't remember that quote specifically, but it must have been somewhere in those emails that I've read on a couple of different live stream shows last year where, she was saying that the motto from Grandma Lorraine was never, never, never give up. Remember your grandma, who is a reader of all people and a great communicator, will remember her slogan, Wendy, don't give up. So, that's also when she says, Jippers hasn't beat the Adelson family yet, or Jippers hasn't beat the Adelsons yet. Yeah, there were all sorts of like kind of slightly funny quotes from Donna Adelson in those crazy emails.
Again, without the murder, they're motivated people. You just obviously take away the murder, but they seem like a regular family that you would meet and like for certain reasons or be maybe annoyed, but they just went that distance. And that's what I find so fascinating about it.
Yeah. Okay. Totally off topic, but do you know Bobby Lee?
Yeah. Bobby Lee. Well, I used to work at the Comedy Store when I lived in Los Angeles. And at that time, he's a lot younger than me. So he was just up and coming. And so I left in 2001, and then he got on Mad TV, and he did great. He's really terrific. Yes, he's a very nice guy. It's great to know a comedian who is a nice person as well as very funny.
Yeah, I hope he's doing okay. I haven't heard anything about him in years.
He got it. What was he interviewed about? Oh, there was a comic that took other people's material. That's a real bad thing in comedy, but there are comedians who do that. And he got involved in outing that particular comic. I remember seeing him interviewed a few months back about that. But that's, and Joe Rogan got involved in all that too. So that's really what made it big, because Joe Rogan started to talk about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw Bobby Lee in Las Vegas many years ago, probably more than 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So he was always really funny. Yeah, I already find comedians to be extremely smart because they have to be witty and fast to come up with comeback lines. And so what would you do behind the scenes to make sure you could come up with material and ad lib all sorts of stuff?
Oh, I was not a great ad libber, and I prayed that no one ever heckled me, because I just had my act. I don't really have anything really to come back. But there are comedians who make their whole, like Richard Belzer. Do you know who Richard Belzer was? He was on SUV, the crime show. He just passed away a couple of weeks ago, and he got his start as the house MC at a club called Catch a Rising Star in New York, and he would be on stage all night introducing each act. And he was someone who could go toe to toe, always had a comeback. He was real fun. He's from the same town in Connecticut where I'm from. I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and raised in Fairfield, Connecticut. Where were you born?
Oh, Chicago.
Where?
Yeah.
In the city?
Yeah, at Michael Reese Hospital, because my dad was a doctor, so he was doing his residency first in Birmingham, Alabama. That's where he first lived, and then moved to Chicago to finish up his residency at Michael Reese Hospital. Yeah, but we moved to Georgia when I was 6 months old, so I don't have any memory of living in Chicago. Yeah. But but in terms of preparation, like, would you often feel like you had to read the newspaper every day or keep up on?
No, my act is like self-deprecating. So it's I do read the newspaper every day, but my act was not based on that. I came up when the comedy clubs were starting about 1980 all through America, and I would be one week in Portland, Oregon, Seattle. Then I would be in Detroit, and it was a really exciting time. But the people that were coming to comedy clubs were all like 30 years old and younger, and it was just. When you're starting out, you just got to figure out your act. But they were not there to discuss. They were drinking. They didn't want to hear political topics or anything in the news, unless you were really excellent at it. And I'm not good at that.
Yeah, and then you also could risk offending a lot of people if you start talking about politics or something.
Well, back then, no. There was a time, I guess, let's see, before Trump, before Bush, it was tough talking about politics. Even with Bush, people did impressions of Bush, and it was like, okay. But the dividing all started like in the 2000s. But yeah, now you walk a very fine line. There's a comedian down here who does impressions, and one of his great impressions is Trump. And I had him perform here at the community where I live. And this is a very Democrat, a lot of people here are Democrat. And when he went on, he did his Trump, and the Trump is very funny. He talks about, I just bought this place, the name of the community, I'm throwing you all out tomorrow. And it's comedy. And these people hate Trump so much. They were just like, they hated Trump through this poor kid doing his act. So, you can't, political comedy now is very difficult.
Okay, well, what about Rodney Dangerfield? Would you have any
thoughts? I worked at his club in New York, Dangerfield's on First Avenue. Okay club. It was always a rough joint. But what you want to know about Rodney, I never met him personally. I was in rooms with him towards the end. He was always a technician. So he was, even as a star, so this is like in 2000, and before that, 98 to 2000, I was working at a place called the Laugh Factory on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And on the 8 o'clock show, I'd be the first guy up because I have a clean act. And as soon as I'm off, then the F this, F that. So I always had to go on first. But the great thing about the period of about a year or so that I remember that Rodney was still very vital and doing television all the time. And he would come and break in jokes. So Rodney would go on even before me. So the show would just open up. He didn't even care if anybody introduced him or not. He would just walk on stage because everybody knew who he was. And he would kill for like 5 minutes. He had the paper in his hand, breaking in new jokes, and then leave. And so the audience was explosive. Here they wanted to see a star, and the first, right out of the gate, they got to see him. And then I would go on, and I'd always get that tailwind of all that excitement. So that was great. But he didn't hang around. He just would come and go and just break in his jokes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Gam Gam times 3 says, love you, Bruce. My daughter got a kick out of your story of being the inspiration for Kenny Banya on Seinfeld. Oh, yeah. Everybody wants to ask you about that.
Hey, did I tell you the story, or I just told you the character? Did I tell you?
No, you mentioned it and how you tried out for the part to play yourself,
right.
and then they gave it to that other actor.
Right. But what really happened, what inspired it was, I'm kind of skinny, but I started to lift weights like around 19. I don't know, whatever. I guess 90, 91. So I outgrew I had 2 suits. That's all I had. And I outgrew them. And I wanted to get rid of them because I couldn't wear them anymore. But I didn't want to give them to charity because they were nice suit. They were Armani. I didn't want to see like a homeless guy walking around in an Armani suit. Regular maybe, but not. So I called up Fred Stoller, who was a writer on the show, because Fred was skinny too. I said, Fred, I got 2 Armani suits. I know you don't really wear suits, but I want you to have them. And that's what he said. He would take me to dinner. And so he called me like about 2 months later to meet him for dinner at like 11 o'clock at night. And it was weird. We were at the Jerry's Deli on San Vicente. And I went in there and I said, Fred, I appreciate you taking me out for dinner, but it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I already ate. I'm just going to have a bowl of soup, but I think you're trying to gyp me out of a meal. I don't want this to count. So I was just being funny, but that stuck in his craw. And Fred wound up becoming, being a writer on the show. So they needed to create characters. So that incident must have piqued him. And that was it. That's how it started.
Okay. Yeah. So interesting. But as we were talking right before the live stream started, so it turns out you were actually on some TV shows in addition to movies, though. I noticed you were the father in some show that looked like it was on Nickelodeon briefly around 1997.
1997.
Do you remember that? Or should I look it up on your IMDb website?
I don't remember. I was the father.
Yeah.
Whatever role, whatever you're talking about, it was these were all small roles that I had. Most of my stuff was stand-up. The stuff that like on VH1 and all that, that's all doing stand-up. I don't know if they exist anymore. There's some things you can see about me, but you're not missing anything if you're not seeing it.
It was called The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
Alex Mack. I know that title. I can't remember. Boy, and what does it say? It says I was on that?
I think it says you were the husband or the father character, and there was only 1 episode, so maybe that's why you don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just get one line, and yeah, I don't remember it. I don't remember.
See, does this jog your memory? It says The Secret World of Alex Mack TV series from 1994 to 98 on Nickelodeon.
It has my name on it. I don't remember that one. Jeez. I could have gotten cut out. I know I did an episode of I don't remember that. These things was a movie. All I remember. Oh, it was about the racing car driver, female racing car driver in 1980, and I played a newspaper reporter. And I just went. I had my one line, and that's it. Tell me again. What was that? That was it. But what was that female?
I showed it on the screen. It says The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Do you see it?
I see it.
See how you were so busy that you can't even remember all the projects you did.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. What about okay, so we talked about that movie Diamond Man, where you said you had one line.
My buddy Dan Cullen. Yes, and he wrote and produced that movie, directed it, And that I do remember. And I did have one line on that. But that had Donnie Wahlberg in it and Robert Forster. That had real live stars. It's a good movie too. And you can get it, I think you can get it on Amazon.
What about this one?
Oh, Action.
What about
yeah.
Action?
I'm very funny
what
in that.
What did you do for
Jay
that?
Jay Moore is a friend of mine. And I was doing a one-person show in Los Angeles, and it was getting a lot of attention. That was like the best thing I ever did. And I didn't know Jay, and a lot of comics came to the show because they heard that it was a funny show. And he befriended me, and he put me on that show. I played Larry the caterer. And I still watch that like every couple of years. It's just a little scene because he plays a movie studio executive, Jay, in that. He's a really great actor. In fact, he's marrying the woman who owns the Los Angeles Lakers, Jerry Buss's daughter. They are engaged, and they called me a couple of weeks ago to tell me about it. So yeah, that's cool. They sent me a picture.
Interesting. Okay. Did you know Richard Belzer?
Well, that's the guy from that grew up in my hometown. I didn't really know him that well. I knew him later on at the Improv in Los Angeles, and he was Detective Munch on two different shows. They were both cop shows. I know one was SVU. I don't know what the other one, but these were very long running shows. I think it was almost 20. Got it in 93. He got that show. He's also in Scarface. He opened for the Rolling Stones, and he was the warm up for the original Saturday Night Live. He wore dark glasses. He was a really cool looking guy, and he could do impressions of like Mick Jagger. And I think he opened up for the Rolling Stones, which is amazing because comics, when you're in a gigantic venue, like for big star bands like that, it's almost impossible to perform. But he was able to do that. He had a great career. And the little I knew of him, he was a great guy. My family knew him and knew his family. His father, here you go. His father had a vending machine business, and they put their vending machines in our businesses. So that Modern Tobacco, there you go. There's your association.
Well, someone asking, have you met Larry David? Didn't you say you actually tried out with Larry David?
I had an audition but I had known him before. Larry David, very interesting. That guy that you see on Curb Your Enthusiasm, that's Larry David. That's what he's really like. And when I was the MC at the Improv in Los Angeles, he would come in. This is like 1980, 81. And it would be like a Friday night. We would do two shows, and this would be like the first show, and almost a full audience. And he would just go on stage, and he was very self-indulgent. He didn't like people. He didn't care about the audience. He had brilliant material, but it was really caustic. And he would do a joke, and some woman would yell out, "That's not funny," or whatever. And he would say, very, very nasty thing to her, like so bad, I'm not even going to begin to repeat it. And he could walk the room. He was like the third guy on, and there was still like 8 more comedians that were going to be on the show, and he could walk half the room because he would get so angry and say really mean things at the audience members. But you realize some of these people people who are steady, sometimes they don't make it. They're just this. But people who have high highs and low lows, they're very memorable. And sometimes those are the ones that become really big stars because they take all these chances on stage, and they don't care what they do to the room because they're in the moment. And some of them go on to big things like Larry.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a comic stage a heckling just so they could use their heckler's material? There were comics. You know, what was the one? You work in a bake. You had standard lines. Oh, I know you. You work in a bakery. You're the one that makes asshole cookies or something. These were all like standard lines. You would always, and you hope that whoever heckled you would shut up because you'd only have about 2 or 3. But you really don't want confrontation with the audience, especially the character that I am. It's essentially this nice guy who's hapless, and it wouldn't make sense for me to become real mean to a heckler because it would break my character, and people would go like, "Where did that come from?"
I see.
So
What
11
about
Heart Live.
Kevin Hart?
11 Heart. Great. I don't know him. He's great. But little tiny guy. Very funny.
Okay. Um, what about Rosie O'Donnell? Because she introduced you on that
Oh
VH1
yeah.
special as one of your friends.
So a funny story. This is where I can bloom a little bit. So I met Rosie. We were working comedy clubs together, but we went to a flying saucer convention. And this was the Pleiadians. If you're into UFOs, I don't know if I am anymore, but at the time, in LA, everybody wants to believe in the supernatural. So we went to this thing about this guy from Switzerland, Billy Meyer, who was supposedly contacted by aliens in like the late 1940s. And so Rosie and I, and like a bunch of other people, but I say, oh, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm into this too. So whenever we see each other, all these years later, we just go, did you speak to Semyasi? That's like the big alien. No, but I've got the Billy Meyer photos. And we still joke about that. And that's like 40 years ago. So yes, I met her at a flying saucer seminar.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, Avalie wants to know, she says she's from Montreal. Could you ask Bruce if he ever came to the Just for Tire Comedy Festival?
I did it in 96, 99, and 2003. Montreal Comedy Festival. If you are looking to plan a trip in July, it's one of the greatest. And Montreal is such a beautiful city. And they are up all night there too. They have a jazz festival, and then they have the comedy festival. They have just stuff going because they have terrible winters and they have short summers. So they get all this great stuff in July and August. And I was very lucky that they chose me, and I got to perform and do my one-man show there and do my stand-up comedy there. And a lot of guys got discovered there. Very exciting time.
Cool.
Norm Macdonald, yes. I worked on the road in like 85 in Canada because Norm was from Canada, and we were in Ottawa at that crummy hotel. I'm blanking on the name of the hotel, but I was the headliner and he was the middle act, and we hung out at night, and I introduced him to Bobby Darin music. That's what I remember. He goes, man, what is that music? I go, that's Bobby Darin. Oh man, that's swinging. And from then on, he became a real big Bobby Darin fan. He was great. I mean, everybody loved Norm. I've never heard a bad word about him. Just a genius. Taken too soon.
Okay, interesting. Okay, Bruce has been everywhere that anyone in comedy has been. I'm glued to my screen listening to his entertainment story. It's fascinating. Have you thought about writing a book?
I have stories. I can't tell you need a lot of time, and I don't know if this audience is the right audience because they tuned in for murder and mayhem, and now my thing is not that, it's comedy. But yes, my one-man show is about these stories, and you can get it for free if you type in Bruce Smirnoff one-man show onto YouTube. It should take you there, and you'll get a sample of these things. But I've seen things that I really can't talk about in public. I can talk about in private that would blow your mind, like big, gigantic stars and their misbehavior off stage. I've seen a lot. I saw stuff I can't even talk about things because it's legally really bad stuff you see. You can't help but see this in Los Angeles. Well, I'll tell you sometime, Judy. I'll tell you because you're a lawyer, and then you'll go, oh, you can't talk about that.
Yeah, you can't say that on my YouTube show. We'll both get sued. Yeah.
Norm's best joke is Professor of Logic. Look it up. Okay, I'll look it up.
Okay, I don't know about that. Yeah.
Wicked place, Los Angeles. Bad people.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Charlie and Alex are similar in that both landed in jail due to their inability to control their tongues. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, Charlie just comes across as such an arrogant person. He just can't stop talking. Even his friends, everybody would say that Charlie was this know-it-all that would just talk you to death. But that's why we have so many funny wiretaps, thanks to Fancy Fiction putting them out there for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Getting back to your career, I'm curious to hear some horror stories about being on tour, meeting questionable people, performing at sketchy venues, or for maybe not so ethical people.
sketchy venues. I mean, all nightclubs, are kind of sketchy venues. They're the questionable people is, well, look what nightclubs are. They're at night. They involve alcohol, and in many cases it involved drugs. Especially in the 80s when comedy clubs were going, and it involves stars. So I mean, like if we're working at the Comedy Store, the Improv, although I was not famous and I wasn't at the level of those famous people, every night Robin Williams would be on, Letterman would be on, and so you have the elite of Hollywood coming to see these people, and the elite of regular people just coming to want to hang around. There's some nights there were lines, especially the Comedy Store in the late 70s, early 80s, where they had no chance. It was Monday nights when Robin would perform in the main room with the Comedy Store players. And the Comedy Store had 3 different rooms. And on a Monday night, they would all be sold out in the hopes that maybe he would go from one room to another, to the other venues that were at the Comedy Store. And then plus be 100 people outside in the hopes of just seeing Robin Williams. And they would stand in line knowing they were never going to get in just the hopes of maybe getting to see him. And he would come outside and do shtick with people waiting in line. So a lot of times they were rewarded for even just hanging out in front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but isn't the stereotype that a lot of comedians have drug problems? Like, did you see a lot of people with drug problems?
Yeah, but as we see in our Markel case here, that there's drug problems even in the dental world. So there's drugs everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. When you were on the cruise ships, did you ever get harassed by old ladies pinching your butt, throwing their defense on stage?
So I'm not going to mention cruise line names, but this one particular cruise line gets very, very elderly people, really, really, really rich. Mm-hmm. And this particular line, they make me at dinner, I have to sit with the single women. So I'm at a giant table, there's maybe 13 people. And then this line hires 2 dancers from Arthur Murray. That's like it's a big dance school. Yeah. And so these 2 dancers, these guys clean up because these guys, they have to dance with all these single women later on that night. And a lot of these women do things with these dancers, and these guys are rewarded by these women. But that's not my gig. And I'm sitting at the table with these women. And I mean, they're like 85. They could be 90 years old. And I'm just going, I just want to get my steak. I just want to eat. Like a woman will turn to me and go, "Oh, I'm so lonely." Oh. And without missing a beat, I just have to go, "I'm sorry to hear that, but you're on a cruise ship. Maybe you'll meet someone and you won't be lonely anymore." And then I got to go back to my meal because if I say the wrong thing to her, I can get fired. And at the same time, I don't want to hear this. It's just like ridiculous. And then I had a woman come up and go, "If only someone could come up to my room later and rub me." And I look and I go, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put out an APB. I'm going to look around. And if I find someone, you'll be the first person I tell." I mean, what am I going to say to these people? But yes, that did happen. Only that one cruise on that line, because that's okay. There was a woman on that cruise. She was an Asian woman, and she brought her own dance. Where these 2 guys from Arthur Murray, there's like 20 women that they have to divide and dance with all night. And these women get very upset because if you can't dance twice. And this Asian woman had the guy from Dancing with the Stars. She paid for this guy first class ticket, his own cabin, and he had to dance with her every single dance. So all these other women were very jealous of this woman because, "How come you get this guy?" She goes, "Because I paid for him. I brought him along with me." And she had different costumes every night. She would dress, getting like the wealthiest people in the world. This is kind of what they enjoy. So I did some crazy things like that. Yes.
Yeah, but was there some sort of rule when you worked on the cruise ships that you were not supposed to fraternize?
No. On some of these lines, it depends what you're either a passenger status or your crew status. So the lines that I worked on are smaller ships, so they want you to integrate with the passengers. So I had a passenger cabin, I had passenger status. So if I were so inclined to go into another person's room, I could do that and not get in trouble. But when you are not on these other lines, you're not permitted in those areas. You get thrown off the ship. You know, these cruise ships have brigs. Did you know that?
Have what?
Brigs, prisons. So like,
Really?
yeah, because some stuff happens.
Yeah, some crimes happen.
They have these new ships that have 6,000-7,000 passengers, and they have a north brig in front of the ship and a south brig. Sometimes, you know, because fights break out you're looking at my girlfriend, oh, step over here, and people get into fights, or in the casino, they lose a lot of money and they get drunk and they take a swing at the car dealer, and things like that happen. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
The little cities.
Yeah. But you didn't get caught up in any crime or assaults, did you?
I just want to do my show and get off. I didn't enjoy being on a cruise. This is not how I saw my career. You know, I saw a motion picture. I saw, you know, I think Woody Allen. I think of very famous people. When I got into this business, I didn't see it being on a you know, a cruise ship. I didn't see it that way. So no, I stayed out of trouble and just really focused on my shows.
Okay. I don't know if you feel like doing this. We're putting him on the spot here. Do you want to tell any joke?
No, it won't have the effect because there's nobody to, you know, it's like you need a reaction for action and reaction. So just go on YouTube, type in my name, and you'll see a couple of videos of me. And I think they're pretty good. So you'll get an idea of what I'm like. There's one from 2017 in Atlantic City. So that's, I think, the most recent one of me. Mm-hmm. And I'm retired now. So I don't, you know, I emceed a show a couple of weeks ago for my friend, Craig Shoemaker. So that was it. I was scared. I was nervous. I haven't performed in like 2-3 years now. So, but I was fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I have enjoyed watching all your stand-up bits, and it's amazing how much people have put up on YouTube. So,
yeah, it's easy.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, okay. Getting back to Murdaugh, would he have been convicted without the cell phone audio? I think it would have been a much harder case without the cell phone audio, because I think one thing that really destroyed his credibility is how Murdaugh kept maintaining at first for the longest time that he wasn't even down at the kennels. But then lo and behold, you know, it turns out his son had actually captured him on the son's cell phone, you know. Was it Snapchat? Yeah, where you could hear Alex's voice. But Bruce didn't follow the Murdaugh case. So let's get back to the Markel stuff here then, since we're still obsessed with Markel, and then people might be saying, well,
there's a comic. Wait.
There's
a stand-up comedian that looks just like Alex Murdaugh. His name is Greg Hahn, Hahn. He's one of the funniest comics there is. He's former U.S. Marine captain. I love this. I know him from L.A., but he also has just recently moved to Florida. Type in Greg, Greg Hahn. He looks like Alex Murdaugh, and he's a wacky comedian. You'll enjoy his comedy, but you'll see the resemblance to Alex Murdaugh.
Oh,
same
well, maybe
color, same rusty or sandy red hair. That's the same thing.
Yeah, so maybe he can like make up a new comedy sketch, you know, based on Alex Murdaugh.
He'll certainly be able to play him in the film. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Well, let's get. Do you need to go?
Where am I going? I got 2 cats that are making my nose run. That's fine.
And your nose is running. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I still want to touch back on the Steinbeck brothers video, because I think
Fantastic.
A lot of people glued to the Markel Adelson case. We all watched that within the last couple of days. Which again is on Carl Steinbeck's new channel, which is called Jury Trial Mentor. So hopefully you guys will all support his channel and subscribe too, because he's going to be talking more about Wendy Adelson and Charlie. So yeah, so going down my list of notes here. Okay, so I think he mentioned something about how Wendy tried again through the court system to get full custody of the children, to take them down to southern Florida, but I don't recall that happening. I mean, I'd have to go back and look through all the filings, but I'm pretty sure the first order where Judge Hobbs denied Wendy's motion to relocate, that first order already said that her ruling was with prejudice, which meant that Wendy could not bring it up again. So that's just another minor point that kind of made me think, okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. Number 45. See, I really like the way that Steinbeck's numbered all of their points. So that's really cool and very organized. Yeah. So remember, like Wendy's semi-biographical book, this is our story. The Lily character also adopts a little girl and then gives the little girl her own last name. And she makes it a point to tell her husband in the story that, no, Josh, she's going to be named Anna Stone, with my last name. So that's where I'm like, wow, that again, her so-called book that is semi-autobiographical kind of mirrors real life, where Wendy changed a kid's last name and the middle name of one of the children. Also, just want to mention that sometime in early June, when we think there was a first attempt to kill Dan, Wendy supposedly had stomach problems, and then Jeffrey Lacoste also had to be out driving around to get her Pepto-Bismol, when probably that was around the time that the hitmen were supposed to be driving around to kill Dan the first time. Let's see. But unfortunately, I don't think Luis Rivera actually mentioned that they had to get a silver car. I don't remember that being mentioned at all in his police interview. It could have been mentioned later in his deposition or something. But as far as I recall, Luis didn't know or didn't say anything about them having to get a silver car, which would then, look like Jeffrey Lacoste's car at the time. So, yeah. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, that's right. It was silver green, wasn't it? And that's why they did it, because that's what Lacoste's car. He drove a silver green car, correct?
Or he drove a silver car, yeah. But the very first time that they went up there, they rented a silver Nissan Altima, and Lacoste drove a silver Nissan Sentra. So that's very, very similar. Yeah, it's just that I don't recall Rivera mentioning that anything about.
Let me ask you this question. I think I asked you this. No, I asked it to Mentor Lawyer, and he answered it on his thing. If you don't have the neighbor seeing the glint of the silver green car, is there a case? Are we here today talking about it?
Yeah, I still think, it definitely would have been even harder, but I still feel like the case still could have been solved thanks to all the security cameras that were around Tallahassee.
Right, but they wouldn't. Without the guy said, the neighbor said, I think I saw a silver green Prius.
Yeah, silver or white.
Without that, how would they have done that?
Well, they probably would have been able to see from the security footage from the gym that there was that silverish Prius that was already following him around and acting suspicious, and followed him from the gym. And then there was also security cameras from the buses in Tallahassee that caught the vehicle trailing Dan, and maybe even security camera from a gas station or something. Yeah, so there was more footage of this suspicious silverish, very pale greenish Prius following Dan. But definitely the neighbor totally helped, though. That's why there are all these like great coincidences that kind of came together so that Dan's murder could be solved. Because otherwise, without all the security camera footage, without the neighbor running out and seeing the car driving away, you're right. Maybe they wouldn't have been able to figure out the connection with Sigfredo and then Katie and then Charlie and all that. Yeah, there were so many dots to connect in tracking them down. Let's see. I like the way that the Steinbecks mentioned how important it was that, or how suspicious it was that Wendy went up to that crime scene area and then didn't even bother to check up on Dan or the kids when she saw the crime scene tape, as well as the police officer with the flashing lights and all the law enforcement cars there. That is very suspicious. Let's see. Oh, and the stuff. Okay, number 73. Wendy's stuff already being packed in the house that seemed strangely clean and tidy so soon after Dan was shot. I think that's worth mentioning again from Dan's mother's book, which again, anybody who hasn't read this book, please do read it, get a copy of it. Let me think. I marked that passage where she said, so on Sunday, 2 days after Dan was shot, then Ruth and Phil Markel went over to Wendy's rental home, and they said, that being said, the house was a rental, And upon closer inspection, it very much looked like it. There wasn't much decoration, and there weren't many toys in the living room. No kids' blankets or soft stuff, as Dan liked to call the boys' stuffed animals. Wendy's place was neat and tiny, verging on empty. It felt very different than Dan's house, where it was clear from the playthings everywhere that two little kids lived there happily. And then she goes on to talk about how Wendy kept putting them off when they wanted to come over and spend time with their grandkids after the service. And then Wendy put off them coming over. So Ruth and Phil and their daughter, Shelley, wound up just packing up a bunch of stuff since Wendy kept putting them off and saying it wasn't a good time for them to come over. So they packed up a bunch of the kids' toys to bring them over to Wendy's. Dan had a house full of playthings, and Wendy's place looked like it needed some. Then they called Wendy again, and then it turns out Wendy says, oh, well, we left town already. So that I found so cruel. So I think it's worth reading this part again, where Ruth says, nobody else, not the police or any mutual friends, was aware that Wendy and the boys had left town. Dan had been shot on Friday, died on Saturday, memorialized on Sunday, and by Monday his children and their mother had up and moved to Miami. I now understood why there had been so few of the kids' belongings in Wendy's house. When I saw it, they were halfway out the door. How could they have packed so fast? Did they know this would happen? So, clearly, I think Dan's parents and his sister knew something was up pretty soon. So, yeah. So I'm glad that the Steinbecks did mention some things about that also.
Let me ask you a question. What kind of lawyer are you in real life?
Oh, well, I mostly do divorce cases as well as some general civil litigation cases now. I've also done a lot of employment discrimination cases, which obviously has nothing to do with the Markel case. And when I was in law school, I actually interned for two different public defender's offices, one in Virginia and the other in DC. So I thought about being a public defender. But I wound up not doing that because the public defender's offices around there, they required you to already have taken the bar or passed the bar before you could apply for the jobs. So by then I had already gotten a job with a civil litigation law firm up in Tyson's. So, but I had also interviewed with different district attorneys' offices too around Brooklyn and Manhattan and stuff. So I was kind of all over the place. But for criminal law, I mean, I think as a practice area, it would be very stressful. So I don't think I could have lasted as a DA or public defender for more than a couple of years. I probably would have gotten burned out pretty quickly. Yeah. So, I mean, what about you? Like, did you ever think about going to law school or being a lawyer?
I have like an IQ of like 94, something like that. It's not very high. I'm not a good student. But I was always funny. So no, I think I was directed to what I can do best. Mm-hmm. I used to sell clothing. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I worked at a big and tall clothing store in Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. That was a front for illegal gambling operation. Oh. And I was so young, I didn't understand it. I was 22 and we didn't do any business. And we were located right in the heart of Beverly Hills. So sometimes I would put on a suit, like a 54 extra large. So I would look like a toothpick in this giant suit. And I'd go out on the street and I'd go, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. And I'd try to get people to come in. And the boss used to grab me and sit me down on the couch. He goes, see that couch? Sit down. We don't want business. And I was so naive. I didn't understand that at the time. But then the guy would give me a bag of money, or a paper bag. I didn't know what was in it until I looked one time, and he'd tell me to run it across the street to the other clothing store and bring it to the owner of that clothing store. So these guys were like all illegal bookie operations disguised as clothing stores.
Oh, okay. Wow. Interesting. Well, but on the other hand, you went to Boston University. That's a good school.
And I went to school with Howard Stern. Who
Yes.
who Howard is. So I replaced him on the radio station when he got fired. And I didn't know Howard, and I've never met him, but he had done something. You want to hear that story? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's like a 2 or 3 minute story.
Sure.
So BU had a radio station, and it's called carrier current. What does that mean? It means you can only hear the show if your radio is plugged into the wall, because that's where the antenna is. So if you're in a car, you can't hear it, only in a Boston University housing or campus something. So anyway, I wanted to be a DJ, and I got my tape in a day too late. And I was very dejected that I didn't get my tape in time, because I knew they would have picked me if they heard me. So a couple of days goes by, and they call me. The station manager, his name was Ted Harbert, who then went on to become head of ABC program. Big shot, who then hated Howard. They used to have feuds together. But the point being is, he goes, listen, something's opened up. You want to have a radio show? I said, yes, I certainly do. And he goes, what's your theme? What's your format? I said, well, I want to play disco music, and I want to tell jokes. And he goes, no jokes. And I didn't understand why he would jump at me like that. So what I found out was Howard had that show, and he did a sketch. Godzilla goes to Harlem and eats all the black people. And what happened was, in the Boston Union cafeteria, the workers in the cafeteria, they had their radios plugged in, and they listened to the station. No one listened to it, but those guys, and they had a work stoppage in protest of Howard's show. So they fired Howard. They brought me in, and that's why I couldn't do jokes. And that's how I. But I never ran into. He was not the same. He's not the guy that we know now. I don't believe he was that guy when we were in college. I think he was a very shy, reserved guy that ultimately bloomed 5 or 6 years later.
Yeah, I see. Okay, well, thank you. Well, maybe we should wrap things up, because people are reminding me that Surviving the Survivor is on, and I know they're doing a live stream with Carm talking to the parents of Ellen Greenberg. So Ellen Greenberg, it's another murder mystery where, unfortunately, her death was classified as stabbed to 3 times, including in her head and her back. And people suspect that her fiance had something to do with that. But I think it's great that YouTubers such as True Lifestyles have been covering the Ellen Greenberg case. But I think, yeah, jumping and stuff that one line bags, but we're running out of time, so maybe I'll do that on another live stream. But
I want to thank you.
They did also talk about that
for having me on.
Oh, sure. Well, we're not over yet, so I'm sorry, but I know you probably have stuff to do also. But let's see. So the Steinbecks also talked about that GoFundMe thing where allegedly Wendy had contacted GoFundMe or tried to get the proceeds and claimed that she was the widow of Dan Markel. So I thought it would be interesting to highlight this, because you can still see it on the website, even though the GoFundMe has been closed now for new donations. But this was set up by his friend Tamara, and they raised $59,508. And there are so many nice words of support from people, friends who knew him through the law school as well as through other times in his life, talking about what a great guy Dan was, and how sad they are for the children and everything. So they're telling the kids how much their father loved him. And so, for example, someone says, your father was a very brilliant and very kind man. I know he loved you both with all his heart, a treasured and valued advisor and friend who will be sorely missed. So just thought that this would be interesting to bring up, because you can still see it on the internet. Also, people are talking about the house and how it seemed like the Adelsons had moved on up later on. I know you talked about how it seemed like in the beginning the family was just kind of like middle class, right? So this is the house. You can still see it on the internet that I guess Charlie and Wendy had mostly grown up in.
It's a nice house.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a really nice house. It looks like they bought it in the 80s, because you can see all the 80s decor in it. And then they sold it in 2015. So you can see all the the inside of, I mean, it looks like a really nice house, but this definitely looks like 80s style decor, right? What I found most interesting was the little fitness room, because on Surviving the Survivor, one of Wendy's former friends, also a friend of Dan's, mentioned that the family had actually created a little fitness room for Charlie because they wanted a place for him to surreptitiously work out when he was suing.
Oh, right, for that, that faux accident. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, when he got injured with the sumo wrestling event, and I think he either broke his wrist or injured his arm, something about his wrist or hand or arm. But then they decided to, make this like fitness room so that he could work out without other people seeing him. Isn't that funny? I mean, if that's true, I mean, that's what this person who actually knew the Adelsons mentioned. So there, I believe, is that fitness room. I'm not sure if it looked exactly like this, because these are probably pictures from when the house sold back in 2015. So just an interesting little thing to mention. Okay.
And if it was just a case of insurance fraud, which I think that's what that was all about,
Yeah.
again, that happens, that goes on. But when you take another person's life, I have no words to say. That's the whole thing that piqued me. You can play your games, you can do whatever you want to do, but when murder comes into it, it's crossed the line.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one thing to be defrauding or attempting to get money from insurance companies and other businesses, but then to actually kill off a former family member. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's end this with like 1 minute of this trombone performance, which I found really kind of funny. In this case, it's a trombone cover of the song Wendi, which I had never known about until this case happened. So I'm not going to play the whole thing, though, but it is kind of interesting. It's this professional trombone player. Her name is Lindsay McMurray, and she used to work at Disneyland and also part of a bunch of different bands playing the trombone. So, are you ready to see it? Okay, great. Hopefully you guys can.
That's great.
Okay. Yeah, she's really talented. She actually, she said she played 3 different types of trombones and then put it all together into that video. So very talented person, and what an appropriate song for this type of video. Any closing remarks?
Well, only thank you so much for having me on your show. I had a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have so much more to talk about. So maybe in another couple of months, then hopefully you will be willing to be on again, because
I got nothing to
there's
do. I just hope that we can get. I think it'll really speed up once things get once the trial starts. Then will be news flashes all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when the trial actually happens, I would probably want to live stream every day or every other day or something, depending on how my schedule can handle it. But until then, I guess for the next X number of months, I need to come up with other topics to talk about on this channel. But next Sunday, Remy and I are going to be doing our live stream show where we read more memories of Dan Markel, because there have been, people commenting, talking about how, Dan was a jerk, or, they heard bad things about Dan Markel. And so, I mean, to counter that, I mean, the poor guy is deceased now. So I think it's kind of mean for people in the comments to still throw out things and say, well, he's a real jerk anyway. No, people didn't like him. I'm like, well, are these people working for the Adelsons, or are they for real, or whatever? But to counter that, I still feel like there is still a huge amount of really positive things that people put out there about Dan and their relationship with him, and what a good person he was. And even if he was maybe a jerk to some people, or some people thought he was pompous and arrogant, well, that still doesn't mean someone deserves to be killed anyway.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so Remy and I will be back next Sunday afternoon. We have to figure out a time, probably around 6 p.m. or so.
And on behalf of everyone who listens to you, thank you for all the work you do. It's unsung. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. Yeah, it's great to meet you because of this case. So yeah, thank you guys all for being out there. I know some people have dropped off because I did tell people to watch Surviving the Survivor also. So I'm going to try to tune in there also. So thank you, Bruce. Why don't you stay on so I could say goodbye to you personally also? Okay, thanks everybody. See you next week.